would be cool. I'll do that. Welcome, everyone, to Practice Live. This is a monthly podcast where we get into the real, into the messy, into the gritty, into the pleasures, all of the things about really being here. Folks from all over the world join me in this conversation. And today I am so honored to be joined by Annie Robershaw. We're going to get into it. We're going to get into it. We're going to get into the twists and turns of life when you go on a track and something re-rails you, maybe rather than derailing. Just going to go with that word right now, the re-railing of life. And sometimes it's a thing that you can see coming, in some way, like maybe the death of a parent or an illness or something like that. And other times it's just a spontaneous twist, a pivot, a plot diversion. That's my chair. I've not known Annie for an incredibly long period of time, but we have worked together, and such sweetness in this person, and I'm so grateful and so honored to share this time with you, Annie. So I'd love to hand it over to you. I'm so glad you said yes, because being displayed, being seen like this is not for everybody. And sharing these most intimate stories is not for everybody, except, frankly, I think it could be, and it would be a really beautiful world if more of us actually shared the intimate, the vulnerable, the tender. It's a very human technology to share these kinds of stories, and I'm really grateful you said yes.
Oh, thank you so much for the honor of being here. It's so, especially to get me on camera, it takes a lot. So it takes some special people to call me up to this kind of format. But thank you very much.
And you've got your beautiful Leo hair on today.
It did get a kind of foofy today.
It's so good.
I've been pretty sick, so this is maybe my first day emerging in any kind of presenting to the world face. So thank you for that.
This is quite the leap from being sick to presenting to the world. You're like,
yes.
let's go on YouTube.
Let's do that. Let's just go big.
Yep. So I would love for you to begin with letting us know what's important for us to know about you. That can include some of your background, some of your work, but it can also include some inner life stuff about what's important to you.
Oh, dear. I would say what's important to me is, the people around me always, and place, space, and the energy of those that I share it with. Community is huge. I'm very fortunate to live in a beautiful community, Bellingham, Washington, and that is one of the great loves of my life, and I revel in that a lot. And most people that know me know that's a big part of what brings me joy. And my little home with my partner Ryan, and my dear friends and family. So I think that's probably where I would start, and extending out from there. I think a big part of who I am is how I show up each day, and that is as a therapist, a mentor, a guide, and a lot of my time is spent there. So, yeah, I think that's probably a good start.
Oh, man. This is what I mean by the sweetness of Annie Robershaw. Starting with people and place. I really appreciate your calling in of place being a precious aspect of your life. I feel very parallel with that. I feel like it's not just this idea of home, it's the land of this home, it's the earth of this home.
Yes.
And all of the ways that it has presence and personality and impact in my day-to-day life. Maybe do you have any words about that? How has Bellingham, well, are you from Bellingham?
I'm not. I was born and raised in Redlands, California, and I've lived in Hawaii, Alaska, Michigan, Montana. I went back for grad school in California, and and my family lived up here in Bellingham. And as soon as I came to Bellingham, I was like, this is it. But by that point, I was on my grad school track and building a business. And so it took me a long time, and also convincing my partner to finally make the, the leap. It wasn't that hard, but it's a huge transition. And so, yeah, in 2021, we finally made the leap and moved up here. But I had spent, I'd been up several times a year for about a decade by that point, visiting my family, and my nephews were raised here. So it's been a big part of my heart. It to me, like Alaska, before that, Alaska was my favorite place. And I feel like Bellingham has so much of what I loved about Alaska, but the community is just it's just the perfect thing for me. It's what I've been manifesting my whole life.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, the first time I came to Bellingham from Maine, in 2013, I was like, "Oh, this place is deeply part of me. It's part of my heart."
Yes, yes.
I no longer live in Bellingham, and ironically, I think you moved to Bellingham right before I moved to where I am now. So, even
Boo.
though we both have this connection with Bellingham, I currently live on the eastern side of Washington on 40 wild off-grid acres, which I'm naming in part because those of you who are watching later, and maybe even now, my internet might like bop out because we have off-grid internet instead of like on-grid internet. Um, but yeah, place, and where place calls us out and supports us,
Yeah.
particularly when like other people are also in tune with that and are able to be able to create community. Actually, can we? This was not part of our plan today, but this is so something I think about a lot, and I feel like with you bringing this in, I'd love to go on this side quest, re-railing from the conversation instead of derailing from it. Um, I would love to hear some bits from you about community. Like what is community? Because I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'll probably hop in and I'll try not to talk too much about it. But for you, like what actually is community? Like what are the mechanics of community?
Mm.
Um, what
Mm.
that's yes, that sound. Those sounds and movements. Like what are the mechanics of community to you in this moment? This is not a static. This is not a test, and nor is this like the forever answer. This is just what's arising right now.
It's a big question, isn't it? I don't know that I've ever been asked that, or even asked myself that directly. But the first thing that came to my mind was love, and like it's like a loving engagement, a showing up, um, a sense of belonging. And I think this theme of belonging is such a core, profound element for me. It is for all of us, but for me, both in the ways that it's been a painful element, and it's been a healing element for me. So I think belonging, and also like believing in something, um, having relationships within community that you want to show up for, that and it's even more than that. It's for me, I love to see and be a part of people's lives as they thrive. And y- and celebrating that, showing up for that, witnessing that, participating. And it brings me so much joy to witness the people around me doing well and creating and building and um, being together, and the joy that comes from that, and also showing up in the struggles and shepherding each other through that. It just it just is essential for me.
Yeah. Yes. So, to recap a little bit, loving engagement, showing up, belonging, believing in something where you want to show up, witnessing the thriving, the creating, the building, and also showing up in the struggles and shepherding each other through that.
Mhm.
Right? I feel like part of my I'm actually going to make a class called belonging or about belonging, because belonging and worth are two of the biggest wounds, two of the biggest diseases in the current Western context. Because, and
Absolutely.
a shorthand of what I would say about that is like, most of us actually don't know the right sizes of getting in each other's business. Um, I feel like most of us don't really know what to do when somebody is. Mm, I don't. I want to say this differently, because I actually think we do know what to do when people are sick or struggling. I feel like this remembering that, and more of us kind of coming out and showing parts of that without it being like a "look at me, I did a kind thing" kind of thing, but like sharing and showing up more. And I feel like the more of us that can be visible in that, the more of us will feel that that radiance of permission to like actually get into each other's business more. I think another piece of this is like, well, two pieces. One is belonging doesn't necessarily mean liking everybody.
No, no,
Like
it
I
does
feel
not.
like a really big part of belonging, and something that I witness a lot, is like I think a lot of people feel like it's going to be like a TV show of Friends, where like literally the TV show Friends, where like you live in a building and everyone like gets along.
Mm,
Um and um part of belonging is actually like learning how to see and practice being in the energy of recognition with people who are very different than you are, or maybe where you don't
mhm,
necessarily 100% like them, and you can
mhm.
still offer your participation of witnessing their thriving, their creating, their building, and also participating in their in shepherding the struggle, or meeting the struggle with people that are not necessarily totally in your like close knit. I think
Absolutely.
another piece of this is more than human, earth, and more than
Yes.
humankin, and
Yes.
place, kind of coming back to place.
Mhm.
So, is there more that you wanna say about any of that?
Certainly, yeah. I think, growing up in what felt like kind of a concrete jungle, that where everything's paved over, and and then there's like manicured greenness put on top of that, like that never felt right to me in a way that I didn't understand, because I wasn't introduced to wild spaces until I was introduced to the ocean pretty early. And I developed this very deep, profound relationship with the wildness and the natural elements of the ocean, and would just spend the whole day as soon as I could walk swimming in the ocean. And I think that was something that just um, it became a part of who I was. And as my life evolved and I was able to get into more forested, wild spaces, I realized that it was elemental to me. I needed it. And that's why getting to Alaska was so transformative for me, where I realized that I was wholly insignificant but connected at the same time. And I think the seeds of that were began with the ocean, and it was really profound, and I didn't really have anyone around me to help make sense of that, but I sensed it. And the more I've been able to be in wild spaces with all types of beings, I have been able to become more who I am. And so that was another big piece about being here, is the access to human community and human creation in such beautiful ways, but also to be able to get out into wild spaces with all types of beings and be able to nurture all those parts of myself and see myself as part of all of those communities. And I'm so much better for it.
Wow. Yes. Yes. Wholly insignificant and yet interconnected. And
Hmm.
highlighting these words I heard you say of like, I didn't have anyone really to guide me through dropping into that more, but I sensed it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I just want to highlight that and affirm that for those of us who are seeking belonging. It's like there is actually a sense that we have access to, and that we can find that in wild places.
Oh, I used to name the waves and have conversations with them, and I'd walk along as they came into shore, and I'd want to
Yeah.
know what they were about and where they were coming from, where they were going, and like I would actually build relationship with
Yes.
the waves and the crabs and it's very interesting. Children get it. They just inherently get it. Um, and then sometimes you spend the rest of your life trying to get back to that knowing. Um,
And to allow, so much of the work in my practice, I feel like both of our practices is to like actually reinstate the technology of imagination and
yes.
to allow ourselves to feel safe enough to play. Because through
Yes.
that playing, we do remember it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, yum. Okay. So, you want to get so do you want to get into some meaty bits? So, this year has had some like, well, actually, I feel like we could actually I am like, how can I ask this without referencing the thing in case you don't want to talk about it? um, I feel like there's been like some years, like maybe like 5 or 7 years of like twists and turns.
Mm.
Some things that have like, wow, oh, Charlie is apparently stapling. I was like, what is that sound? Um, Charlie is apparently stapling the flapping tar paper. um, okay.
A man
Well,
of service.
he's, yes, so is. Um, I feel like there's been like some time of twists and turns, and some of them had like there's been bursts. There's been like little eddies in which like things have moved, and then maybe some like times of pause, and then some more. But where would you like to start with this tone of practice? Right, because I feel like one of the things about practice that I hear a lot is like I started a thing and then something interrupted me. And then now I don't know how to get back to it. And I'm like, what if that's not the conversation? Like, what if the
Yeah.
conversation is like actually the practice of staying with the twists and turns rather than doing something? But we can get back into that. But I'm curious, like, where would you start your story of twists and turns of like things like not necessarily going the way that you thought they would?
Has it ever not been that
Yeah,
way?
I mean, like,
Yeah.
in somewhat recent history.
Yeah, I feel like it's always been a bit of Mr. Toad's wild ride, but when you become a therapist, all of that becomes grist for the mill, and I really appreciate that. Um, I think my practice of being in practice as a therapist has been maybe a very interesting journey on so many levels, and um, I think I entered into it. Just hustling and surviving. And as I think many therapists do, you kind of enter into like almost a poverty slave contract, um, starting out with school and going into debt and practicing for free for a few years or at low cost, below survival wages. And then you come out and spend a bunch of money to get licensed, and off you go, impoverished and worn down. Uh, and now you are a professional holding major liability and responsibility for the mental health of your clients. And going into private practice, you also are on a fast track of learning how to be a business owner, which they don't prepare you for in grad school. So off I went, and it was relatively successful, but grinding, just grinding. And at some point, there was a sense it was unsustainable, and I started looking for ways to make it more sustainable that shockingly required me to grind more. If I just do this work harder doing this thing, then eventually I'll be able to get some rest. And that included hiring employees and mentoring therapists and starting a whole new wing of my practice, and just layers and layers of additional work, additional learning, additional complications. And right about the peak moment of that, COVID hit. And um, for therapists, for all of us, everybody was impacted in such wild and unique ways. But, suddenly I was at home. I had this office and employees and all these responsibilities. And now I'm sitting in an uncomfortable chair at home, providing care for people panicking about something that I too was going through. And being impacted. And typically therapists aren't intended to be working with clients who are going through the same trauma you're going through, but it was completely unavoidable. And it was hard. And especially while you're watching everybody making sourdough bread at home in their PJs, and you're slug festing it out the whole year, because there was no rest. So I think that was definitely a real pivot moment from where I thought my life and my practice was going in a direction that probably wasn't that healthy for me. And so in retrospect, I'm kind of happy for the interruption, but I kept grinding and adding and trying to keep everybody going until I burned out. And that led me to seek coaching and support, which, and inevitably I did, and it helped me very much. But I also decided to take a 3-month sabbatical with my partner to Bellingham in 2021. Started the coaching program while I was on sabbatical, continued to supervise my employees. So sabbatical, and yet, well, it was a sabbatical from, it was seeing clients, but I continued to be like, okay, now I'm going to come up with a new idea about how I'm going to get out of burnout that's going to create more work for myself. And this is all in retrospect, clearly, because it all seemed real genius at the time. um, and I made some really powerful changes with my practice, with my work, that I'm really enjoying. But at the time, I decided through this coaching that I was going to start a second business that would be a non-therapy business, and it eventually became Delightfully Free, and I fell in love. And so Delightfully Free is a business, a kind of a peer-to-peer support business for child-free women, whether by choice or by circumstance, as I am. And so I started, I moved. Well, first I broke my hand. I moved to Bellingham, restarted my business here, helped my husband start a contracting business, started the third business, Delightfully Free. As I was establishing myself, I was doing this coaching. And so it's just like, do, do, do. And then the following year, broke my leg, as if the messages were not clear, like maybe I need to slow down. And kept going. And now I'm running two businesses and offering things in both, got my leg up on, all the things. And, and I finally, last year, I was like, okay, I'm recovered from the broken leg. I'm kind of finding my groove, but I'm tired, and I'm like, I am working all the time. I thought this was supposed to lead to some space and peace, but I was really excited about the things that I was working on. And then, but it was kind of clear that the wheels were starting to come off the bus a bit, and sleep wasn't good. And then my dad died. And then the election happened. And then my beloved pup Stella died. And that began the fall into the winter. And it's been kind of a 2-season winter for me. And that I'm just now starting to emerge out of, where it's just like you're on a path, and the universe says, no, you would, no, you're going to stop. And that's really So I am emerging out of about 6 months of having to halt and pause everything other than my private practice. And during this time, of just focusing on my private practice and my mentorship with other, EMDR therapists, something really surprising has emerged. My burnout has gone down, and my love and my passion for the work of being a therapist and a mentor to other therapists has blossomed again. And it had me thinking, huh, maybe the way that you get out of grind culture and hustle culture is not to hustle more. Maybe it's to slow down and take stock, but that's often very hard to do because we live in a capitalist culture that has a lot of inequity, and it's difficult to survive financially and slow down like that. But that has been just a big epiphany that I think that I was so ingrained with work harder, work more to get to rest, and that you rest is something that's earned. Um, and that has just been turned on its head for me right now. And I'm in kind of the deep work of uh, un- unprogramming and deprogramming, uncoupling myself from that at this point. And before I push the gas on anything else, what is it all for? What is this all for? Is the question that I'm really grappling with. And that's where I'm at with my practice, personally and professionally.
Wow. Wow. What is this all for? Man. So, right, it can sound like simple mechanics to be like, "Well, to stop hustling, you have to stop hustling." Well,
Duh.
oh, it just takes death and
Right. Mm.
and a real crappy election results to just stop. Um, what does it look like? What are the mechanics for you? Okay, so do you get lit up about not doing enough? Do you get
Oh,
like where how have you what does getting lit up look like for you and um what does it look like from there? Like I kind of want to say like
mm.
do you upregulate to downregulate? Like that's usually what I have to do. But like you're like what are the mechanics of your practice around like okay, so like what I have known is to work harder, to work more, to get to rest and rest is earned. And then life interrupted you and said, "Sit your ass down." And you were like,
Yes.
"Okay." And for 6 months like what does it look like to companion yourself when the shit arises?
Oh, it's kind of ugly at times, I'm not gonna lie. It's ugly. It's there I grew up in a very working class, hard work ethic family, and I really pull yourself up by your bootstraps type of thing. And it's just so in built in, and it's really hard to extract, and you don't rest until the work is done. But when you're in business for yourself, and and with the type of work I do, the work is never done. There's always something more that you can be doing. And as a manifestor generator, there's always ideas that you have that you could right. It's an endless and as a person that loves people and community, there's always offerings or connections. It's never ending. The options, opportunities, or the supposed tos, and it's a real struggle. And I can't say that I have um, the answer, but I've just been kind of on the ground in the arena struggling with it. But it shows up a lot for me as the word lazy. um, you're being lazy. you're not doing enough. These real shamey, judgmental, internalized voices that are there to protect me, but not effectively. And you know, comparing, just also seeing so many of my brilliant friends and colleagues just going for it and admiring them so much, and it's hard to be like, actually, I'm not. I'm just gonna like sit by the fire and read a book or stare at the wall for a minute here, and I'm not gonna like build that thing or do that thing or say yes to that thing, because this has been a year of saying no to almost everything, which is really hard because I'm a yes person. And just sitting with the discomfort of it and just being like, wow, I am living in a world of surrounded by hustle energy. And I'm living in a culture where people are groomed to hustle for their worth. And I've been so much a part of that, and trying to separate myself from that almost means stepping out of um, the world a little bit. In feeling a bit othered and out, and it's been helpful. It's been winter because, especially in Bellingham, everybody gets real introverted around here, and people do slow down, so that's helped. But yeah, it's been a lot of grappling, and also grappling just as I have, but in a new way. Just those beliefs about inadequacy, and the struggles with where, like, knowing that my worth is inherent, but struggling with the truth of that, and that um and also that question, what is it all for? What is it all for? Like, what do I actually want? What is my dream? And I think for so long, my work, my practice, has taken over my life, and in a way that I often lost track of what was I doing this all for. And I'm slowly coming back to that in this embodied, nurturing way that's feeling exciting. But there's been a lot of just sitting in the void, which is uncomfortable. And when you're so goal oriented and moving so fast, and you're having lots of successes and rewards from that, it's hard to sit in that void and just be. Um, but it's also it's yummy and delicious too. It's not all bad. I don't want to discourage anybody from it, but so it's
It's not all bad.
not all bad, y'all.
Oh, this is so wonderful. Um, Something I had made a note of in my own words when you were talking earlier was the enslavement of excitement.
Yeah,
Um, and I feel like some of us, myself included, this is also me, also a manifesting generator. And the ideas are endless and the
yeah,
excitement is endless. Um, I feel like for a long time in my own way, which I'm still unwinding this again. I'll get into that in a second. But um I've sort of like made the hustle fun by creating a bunch of things that I'm excited about, but I'm still spinning my wheels and still not really necessarily dropped into the experience because I've been enslaved by excitement. Like I've been
yeah,
enslaved by like all of the possibilities. When I was 22 through 24-ish, somewhere in there, somewhere in my like mid to early 20s, I moved to Rhode Island, broke up with my boyfriend of 10 years, and sat still for 2 years. Um, I noticed I was writing the same stupid story in my journal with different characters over and over and over again. I noticed that I was drawn to the same achy media, like the songs I was interested in, the movies I was interested in, basically were like only telling the story of my pain. Um, and that I was spinning, that I was like, that I had sort of bought the lie that I needed to earn my worth. And I'm like, I know that I'm worthy. I know that I'm worthy. And I actually need to like drop into it by dropping nearly everything. I worked my one job at the JCC. I had one friend who was 40 years older than me, something like that. She was like 30 or 40 years older than me. And like we would go have Vietnamese food and occasionally listen to live music or make music, and we would go swimming. And like for 2 years, I just did that and let kind of everything else fall away, because a lot of my friends in my younger time, they just wanted to like go and they wanted to rise and they wanted to drink and they wanted to go out all the time and they wanted to, work, work, work. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to figure
Yeah.
out how to be here.
Yeah.
And I could totally be seduced by this. And um, I love when you were touching in on like there was no rest in COVID for any of us. I feel like there was no rest in COVID for any of us who were doing care work. Like
Yeah.
my business like got more intense in
Yes.
COVID. And I was totally watching everyone else like make sourdough bread and like I was just like, that's good for you.
Yeah.
Like
Must be nice.
that must be nice. I'm like working like until 10 p.m. every day because people are like texting me all hours of the day being like, help. I'm like, who am I?
Mhm.
What are we doing? Um, so heard. Um, I love this. I love this. And it really is a practice because like sitting sounds easy, but sitting with discomfort is not. Like,
Mhm.
and actually sitting is not easy. Those voices that are there to protect us, but they're actually not doing it in a really effective way of like, you're being lazy, like you're not
Mhm.
doing enough. Um, yeah, and I feel like this is so much of this conversation for me about practice of like, this isn't really about doing something. It's actually about being here. Like
Yes.
in these seasons, like what does it take for me to actually actively be here? What does it look like to actually actively be here? So,
Yes.
yeah, knowing my worth and struggling with the truth of that. Wow, knowing my worth is inherent and
Yeah.
struggling with the truth of that. Is there any more you wanna say about that?
I mean, it's just so thematic. I would say a huge percentage of the people I have worked with in my private practice over and or just as a therapist in general over the course of my career, that is one of the core wounds of our culture and our time. And you know, it's to witness it in others also is such an opportunity to heal it in yourself and to see it and to be accountable to yourself. Um, I think there's something about when you're a manifesto generator, or you're just accustomed to hustle, is definitely um, an edge to learn that the practice is sometimes sitting in the void and realizing that there's certain life events that are chapter ends, and sometimes you don't know it when it's happening, right? And I feel like for lots of complicated reasons, like my dad dying is an end of a chapter for me, and also my pup Stella, and also the election and what's happening in our country. There just seems to be a confluence of like there's the past and what was, and being in the void of what's becoming, and not trying to perform um, or move too fast into creation until you integrate that ending and really reconcile that it is an ending and it's a completion, and take a moment to observe what about those last chapters or that last chapter um, are significant, important, need reflection on. What are the aspects of who you were during that chapter that you want to carry forth with you? What needs to be left in that part of the book? And I feel like that's happening so intensely for me personally, but I also sense that that's really where we're at um, in our country, in our culture, and really throughout humanity. Like we are at a moment and a crossroads, and pushing forward with what we know and how we do things. I don't think we're going to get where we need to go the way that we got here. Um, and I'm really like being in the void of that is very uncomfortable, because I knew how to get by and to relatively succeed in that. But I don't know what this is yet. I'm not familiar with the terrain or what the practice of this space is. So I always come back to like kind of what my core practice compass is, and that's curiosity. And I'm just trying to sit in the discomfort of just being curious and noticing, and not being driven by the compulsion to act, um, because I'm just not sure yet. I'm not sure what that action is for me or for us just yet.
This was a profound this has already been a profound conversation in
Mhm.
totality, but these pieces are so important, and I hope the world hears this. Being in the void of what's becoming, not moving too fast into creation without recognizing the ending.
Mhm.
And what about this last chapter is important, reflecting on that, reflecting on what to carry forward and what to leave behind, what to allow to decay. And I love what you just said of like, I knew how to get by. I knew how to notice we didn't say I knew how to thrive in the old world.
Yeah.
I knew I knew how to navigate and get by in the old world. And we don't really know from here. And um I feel like there's some like different, in my own moment, because I have spent years resting. I've gone in and out of resting, and I'm in a burst where I'm like, "Oh, I'm making." Like, I feel like
Mhm.
some of us in this moment actually have the some sight to make some next things and to allow some of us to rest. And the resting of those who are resting will allow some of us to return to rest, and that we actually get to model that spectrum. And can we and what does it look like to be present with both ends of that? And I feel like that requires seasons of recalibration. Like, I feel like I'm able to be right now in my life and my practice and my work and what I'm creating, I'm able to be present with it. For one, I've hired like help to like help me
Yeah.
see, which I heard you sort of touch on in the transition of moving from California to, or wherever you were before, to
Mhm.
Bellingham. Like, there's something so important about like having intentional witness, as part of
Yes.
presence. And actually you had said something about that, and I can't remember what it was or where it is. But there's something about that. I also want to highlight something that I heard Annie say, about a practice, which is the practice of curiosity.
Mhm.
um, and I'm curious if you might share a bit more about what practice means to you, um, and maybe some mechanics about like what what that looks like. What does it look like for you to practice? What does it look like for you to practice curiosity?
Yeah, I think practice curiosity is practice, and practice is curiosity for me, and both personally and professionally. And um, you know, with my work as an EMDR therapist, it requires such a presence of witnessing with curiosity and not coming with preconceived notions. I come with a structure, a theoretical approach, and a container that allows for some structure for that curiosity journey, if you will, but to just not assume, not make assumptions, and to and let the curiosity guide the process. And this is what I do personally, is just trying so hard not to make assumptions, and to be present with what is. And and through that, so much else happens, like compassion and co-creation and all the 8 C's that come from IFS, but in my head of cold cannot come up with right now. But it always works whenever I'm lost, whenever I don't know what to do, whether in work or life. I take a step back, and I come right back to curiosity. I'd be curious about what's happening, where am I, how am I feeling. When I go into a session, I always start with, how am I feeling, where am I at, like doing a check. Like, the EMDR has 8 phases. I call this phase 0. Like Like, I am the tool. Where am I? Where am I in life? Where am I in place? Where am I energetically? How do I feel? And just even being able to register that helps me to go in. And when something's happening or I'm picking up on something in a session, I have some awareness of like, is this mine or is this something that's happening in this space with my client? And, you know, and not making assumptions about like, oh, I'm doing something wrong or something's off or, it also helps guide me in helping to understand my client, my path, my client's path, and where they want to go, where they've been, and it is I just it is the one thing that I could not live without in this life. To be able to, it is like the glasses, the goggles, the compass. I just don't even know how I would function without it in work or life. So to me, that's what practice is. All else is born out of that.
Wow, I love this. So much of what I hear you talking about with your professional work, your professional practice is so relevant for all of us. Like, what happens when we let curiosity guide us in the process of being with what is, and that allowing us to lead, allowing to be led to compassion and co-creation in the other C's that are
Yeah.
not rememberable in this moment.
Yeah.
And the check, like noticing how I'm feeling, where am I in place in life and feel, and noticing what's yours and what's not yours.
Yeah.
I found the thing that I had heard you say earlier, which is witnessing others is such an opportunity to see ourselves. And again, I feel like whether those of us who are here watching, like if you're a professional witnesser or caregiver in some way or not, like I feel like to get to that belonging and to that recognition of the deeper conversations of what it means to be human, this applies. When we witness others, we actually witness some parts of ourselves. And when we're witnessing some part of ourselves, that probably is also conversely true, where we could actually see ourselves in the fabric of the greater story.
That's right. That's right.
So we have like 10-ish minutes. I'm curious if that's enough time to drop into a little bit around Delightfully Free
Sure.
and your anything you feel like called to share around that as a professional practice, but also your journey with, um, yeah, your journey.
Yeah, yeah. So I was one of those people that from as long as I can remember was like, I'm gonna be a mom. And like as a little kid, like naming I was a tomboy. I wasn't into playing with babies, but I would dream about having babies and always. And it just was like it was just that was how it was gonna be. And never a doubt. And then during my first marriage in my 20s, we quickly realized that wasn't going to come easy. And I went through years of infertility treatment, surgery, all the things. And it definitely was talk about chapter ending moment, like one of those precipice moments that just totally changes your life. And it really kind of there is like a specific moment after the last infertility treatment failed where I would just remember sobbing and just coming out like in that guttural way of like, if I'm not going to be a mom, who am I going to be? And like my identity was so tied to it. And I think I was my late 20s at that time. And really everything in my life changed. And at the moment, it felt like I was dying. And in a way, I was like who I thought I was, who I thought I was going to be, died in that moment. And what emerged was probably something so more me than I would have ever had access to had I had kids, which God forbid if you tried to tell me that at that moment. But my life unfolded in ways that just feel magical and mythical at this point from that time, which is when I lived in Alaska, and led to the end of a marriage on loving terms, but definitely it like the death was catastrophic in a lot of ways. And I think, looking back at that time, it was like kind of early internet. There just wasn't any access to anything for women who were child free. And, it was kind of like being a leper in a way. It was just like almost like it was catching because, when you're in your 20s, a lot of people, at least back then, most of your peers are having kids. They're either thinking about having kids, they're actively having kids, they've already had kids, or they're getting ready to have kids. And you're going to a bazillion baby showers. And so, socially, I was surrounded by pregnancy and motherhood and grieving. And I didn't have anybody, I didn't have any mentors. In fact, on both sides of my family for 3 generations, I am the only one that didn't have a baby. So even in my family of origin, like I was othered, I was out, and I was treated with love and regard for sure, but also pity. The pity, I think, was so immense, and just feeling like I didn't belong, and I didn't, and so I look back on that time and just how ostracized and lonely, and nobody got it. And everybody wanted to fix it. And, like, what did you think about adoption? Which is, just the craziest thing you could ever ask somebody that is going through infertility, as if they haven't thought about that. Just people want to help. They want to make you not go through what you're going through and not be who you are. People are uncomfortable with women who don't have kids, and it's the first thing people often ask women, strangers, like always ask, do you have kids? Do you have kids? So it's something that you have to answer for as like a justification of your existence. And I just went on and lived and created a life that I love, but I don't know that I fully appreciated um what a heroine's journey it has been to be child free by circumstance. And over time, I started to meet and become in community with other women who are child free, whether by choice or by circumstance. And being child free by choice also comes with its own burdens and social ostracization. And at some point, it occurred to me that there was no community. If you look on the internet or anywhere, there's a million groups for moms and retreats, opportunities to gather, to support, tons of places to go to meet, but there was nothing that I could find for women without children. And so that's where it was born. And it was actually like, I actually had an experience with a client, a therapy client, who like lashed out at me because I was supporting her through actually hating being a mom of small children. And she lashed out at me like, you don't know, you don't have kids. And and it was actually born out of that moment that it all kind of started to come together after that experience. And so I started to think about how could I use my experience, and how, like, the pain, but also how I learned to thrive and create a life I love, and that I wouldn't change for anything, to support other women along that journey and create, because it is a unique journey, and there are like many opportunities that come with it, but also many vulnerabilities living in very patriarchal society. Um, and so that's how I created Delightfully Free. And last year we were doing moon circles twice a month, and that paused with my losses. But right now I'm really focused on one-on-one peer support, and I love to focus on working through some of the hurdles and the struggles that women face as child-free women, but also really leaning into the cultivation of a life that you love, where you do feel delight and the freedom that comes with being child free. And so much of the kind of the learning and the principles of my work as an EMDR therapist, come into that work, but it's not therapy. It's decidedly not therapy, but there's a lot of aspects of EMDR that don't need to be for therapy, that you can use in cultivating a vision for your life and working with the blocks that may be getting in the way of doing that. And so that is the playground that I get to do that work and really give my love and attention to child free women.
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that whole arc. Um, what emerged was more beautiful than if I had had it was more beautiful, it was more magical and mythical than if I had had children. I'm so grateful that you touched on the leper on the leper bits. Um, so I also am child free, and you and I have talked about this, but like I actually didn't grow up wanting to have children. But I had a dream in my early 20s where I had one child, and I like looked down on her, and I knew I like she was like strapped to my body, and I looked at her and was like, "Oh, it could be like
Mhm,
this."
mhm.
And then sort of became more conscious of like, I think I could do that. And actually, in the last 2 weeks, I've uncovered some like pretty tender information about myself around like realizing I had spoken a curse over my life when I was 9 years old in an elevator when I was looking at my stepmom, and I had already been abused. And she was very pregnant, and we were in like in the hospital elevator. And um, I was like, "Wait a minute, how are babies made?" And the answer disgusted and, like, terrified me, and I was like, "No, I will never do that." And even when I wanted to have a child, I noticed that I went back and forth with this intense fear of like, "Oh my gosh, the pain. Oh my gosh, the life changes. Oh my gosh, the fluids, like, my neurodivergent self, can I really handle that?" But I had this, like, intense desire to see somebody from their beginning, to witness somebody from their beginning, and to participate in that. And then there was that final chapter ending of like, oh wow, no, that's not going to happen. And it was after I had lost two, I had had two miscarriages, one that was a bit
Mm,
further along. And I was like, this is fucking heartbreaking. And
mhm.
when I got together with my second husband, he was so clear. He was like, I am not having any more children. And I was like, oh, yeah. Okay. Because it had been like a decade of like, will it
Mhm,
happen? Will I move through? Will
mhm.
I heal this thing? Will it happen? No. And then, 6, 8 months ago, I have no idea about time anymore. Last June, I had a hysterectomy, and I feel like the thing that why I'm sharing all of this is really to highlight the thing I heard you say was, um, this like what emerged. I feel like there's something that's still emerging for me about the
Yes.
magic and the mythos. Like before, I was sort of like held in place with this grief, and it was confusing. It wasn't a straightforward grief for me because my identity wasn't attached to being a mother, and then it was.
Yeah.
So I was like beating myself up while I was yearning for something. Um, yeah, and this thing that's unfolding now that I can recognize the energies of where I am a mother, and actually, I would even say I'm stepping into grandmother now. Like, there's something about hysterectomy, even if it doesn't totally move you into menopause, where you're like, "Oh, wow, no.
Mhm.
I will no longer be running around or whatever it is, like, I will no longer be doing things the way that I was doing them before, whether, dramatic or subtle, and that's totally seeping in a whole new way where I'm like, "What is this for?" Like, what is
Yes.
so if not for the legacy of through children, what is the legacy? What is this for? Like, where is the potency of what I'm bringing in my life, and what does this contribute to? Um, yeah, the world has become my grandchild.
Yes. And this is like the magic. And every child-free woman I have had the honor to witness and to hear their story. It's such a profound, unique experience. It means something different to each woman that I've encountered, just like being a mother, like giving birth to children or adopting children or raising children, whatever way they come to you, has its own unique journey. I feel like child-free women's journeys are often ignored in the shout or not even acknowledged.
Yeah.
And just this beautiful piece of your story, it's just like it is so much a part of who we are in so many unique ways. And these are stories that deserve to be seen and heard and
Yeah.
celebrated.
Ooh, maybe we write a book.
Sounds
I
great.
really feel like that. I really feel like that. I feel like it's what part of this podcast is really, is that, like, stories of all of us are
Mhm.
stories of experience. We all have teachings that are embedded. We all have these, and it's not about, like, mining everything, but just, like, through this act of sharing story, through this act of witnessing each other's stories, we can see ourselves,
That's
and we
right.
can see more that we're truly not alone, and, and that we have, capacity for really infused presence in our lives.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
We are essentially at time. I'm curious if there's, 2 things. I'm curious if you've already shared a practice, so I'll just highlight it. I could highlight it, which is this practice of curiosity. And a thing that is really standing out to me in that is this practice of not making assumptions.
Mhm.
And if there's anything you would add to an invitation around practice, I would love to give space for that.
Yeah, I always, I think maybe an offering for practice I'll take from my work as a therapist. So often people come to therapy and their goal is the absence of something. I don't want to be anxious anymore. I don't want this trauma anymore, which is totally understandable. Um, but it's not very motivating. It's motivating in the sense of when it's painful, you want to get rid of it. But the real work is in the becoming, the healing from
Mhm.
that, but in the becoming. And what I have come to realize is that when we spend time and focusing on what do we want instead, what do we want instead? And that is sometimes a really, really challenging question, especially for those of us who've encountered so much pain and loss, is that we're survival based beings. So we're really focused on what do we need to do to survive, which sometimes really focuses our energy into the thing that's risking our survival. And one of the best ways that we can shift out of that state and yes, still survive, but start to thrive is to really imagine what we want
Yeah.
and build in that and get into it in a sensory experience. Like when I think about a day in the life of the other side of healing or the other side of whatever it is you're working on. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? What's the temperature like? Who's there? Or maybe I'm alone. Like, what am I doing? What's the emotion I'm feeling? What are the sensations? Like, as much detail as you can start to build in, and it may be hard at first, but do that. And if you say, well, I'm not anxious anymore. Challenge yourself to move that into an affirmative statement. What is the opposite of that for you? And just keep going. Like it's okay if it comes out as not this, not that. Just shift it into what do you want instead. The power
Mm.
of that practice is um, like nothing I've ever seen before. Like everything, all of the work that I do as a therapist or as a peer support and delightfully free starts right there. And for my own life, what do I want and
Yeah,
what's
that's
happening?
gorgeous.
Hmm.
That's so gorgeous. That's a basis of some of the most ancient Mi'kmaq teachings. It's like the first teaching of kindness is to, like, actually
Mm.
know what you want, and
Yeah.
that's true. I feel like that kindness that moves with ourselves, like, not just kindness for others or for the sake of others, but, like, this kindness of experiencing our actual lives, like,
Yes.
"What do I want?"
Yeah. And,
Yeah, I
and at the root of that's curiosity, but it's just a way that you can use curiosity, right?
Yes,
Like an actual practice of curiosity.
I love that. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
Um, there's is there are there any questions from the back end before we move into the announcement bits? We'll give a breath for that, which it can be in the chat or okay. Is there anything, Annie, that you would like to invite us to participate with you in? Anything you'd like to share with us to consider?
Well, I have two websites. One is for my private practice as an EMDR therapist, where I provide EMDR intensives, as well as consultation and a support group for EMDR therapists. So you can find me there at ANNE, so Anne Robershaw, ROBERSHAW.com. And then Delightfully Free, I don't have that domain yet, so you can find me there at AnnieRobershaw.com, Annie
Love it.
with an I. I am decamping from all things meta, so my Instagrams are going to be coming down soon. I haven't been active on them in years, but I am moving to Substack, and I haven't
Mm,
written there yet, but I have a page and you can follow me there. And that's at Delightfully Free. So
perfect.
that will be kind of like eventually the place I write for both my private practice and Delightfully Free, or whatever is on my mind.
I love it. I also haven't written on Substack, but I'm so delighted by that community. And
It's
there's
awesome.
somebody who I follow who like does a monthly workshop and has a subscription. So I don't know, maybe Annie will like offer some classes for people in the future.
Possibly,
Stay
possibly.
tuned
Yes, stay
when we
tuned.
feel ready to add things
Yeah,
and
when
not
I'm
just
ready
say
for
no.
spring.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you
Yes.
so
When
much for this conversation. It's been such an honor.
I'm so grateful. I'm going to share a couple of announcements and then more um, formally thank you. Um, so really the announcement that I have is that on April 1st, I'm releasing the practice planner, and it's an open date resource and kind of mini course that's seasonally guided. In fact, we're starting the new year in April instead of January 1st, to like really go with the seasons. And so anyone who's worked with me in community who's had access to the practice journal, it's kind of like a hybrid of my first book, Don't Just Do Something, Be Here, and a practice journal and a planner that companions you in practice. Um, and there's more coming that I'll share soon. And next month, we will be joined by Laura Lee. Oh my gosh, I just forgot her last name, but I can find it in a second. Oh my goodness. Laura Lee Carey. And we're going to talk about caregiving. I love that her last name is Carey, and it's funny that I didn't quite remember it. We're going to talk about caregiving, and again, another iteration of twists and turns, like when you are suddenly taking care of your parent and living at home with them. Laura Lee is so wonderful, and it will be so sweet to have her. And it's been so sweet to see you and to talk with you, Annie. What a profound collection of gems I have in my 5 pages of notes, that I'm so grateful that you've shared. Um, thank you so much for sharing so tenderly and also while you're sick. I'm glad that you felt well enough to be here, and, yeah, just my heartfelt thanks to you.
Thank you to you and your community and for the opportunity to be here. I'm so grateful.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, loves, hope to catch you next time, and hope to catch you next time. That's it. There's
Okay.
no other and.
Bye.